Welcome, friends, to our class. You'll find this available on my Facebook and YouTube pages and IMCWs as well. And as always, I just want to thank you for being part of this weekly gathering. It feels so good to have us join together from all around the globe. And before introducing our guests for this evening, I'd like to begin with just a few announcements. And the first is a reminder each week that you're invited to join our mindful movement class right before this class, and then right after the talk ends, to join our discussion groups. And you can find out the links on tarabrock.com/class. Also, a reminder that each Saturday I'm holding an online event for our broader community. It's called a satsang, and it's a way that we meditate together and just explore the questions that you might have about bringing practice alive in your life at these times. So you can register and save yourself a spot for this coming Saturday. Again, just look on my website under, it's part of all my virtual offerings. And I'm also excited to tell you about an upcoming program that I'm offering. It's a 6-week course called Conscious Loving, and it's a chance to deepen and enrich all of our relationships. So please check on my website on my homepage, and you'll see it there. It starts on September 24th. Please check imcw.org for live stream offerings made available by our local DC teachers. This week's affinity group meetings are singles, women, young adult, Asian, and the Teens of Color mindfulness group. Finally, to remind you, and many of you know, that these teachings, all of my talks, meditations, are offered freely here. Your donations make a huge difference in making that possible. So if you can offer $10, we appreciate it. More is fantastic. And if you can't, if you're tight in some way, it's fine. You're entirely welcome and belong. So again, thank you for whatever you can offer, and links are found in the description. Okay, and now I'm excited to introduce you to a dear friend and a fellow teacher, Sharon Shelton. In addition to teaching meditation, Sharon's an interfaith minister, a professional coach, a businesswoman, and an activist. So she's just on all cylinders. And as you'll find, she's a deeply wise, compassionate being. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Namaste, friends.
So good evening and namaste, everyone. I appreciate you joining me tonight. My name is Sharon Shelton, and I am a mindfulness teacher. I'm a life coach, a mentor, a group facilitator, and a Vipassana practitioner. Thank you so much to my beloved teacher and friend, Tara, for inviting me to speak to you all tonight. I've been studying the Dharma for over 20 years, probably more persistently in the last 10 plus. And I always like to acknowledge the source of these teachings whenever I speak about them. So the Buddhist teachings first came to this country through Chinese immigrants who settled in the western parts of the US, as well as by those who visited Asia and brought back with them the Buddhist texts. And I have such a deep appreciation for them and for these teachings that continue to give me life every day. I'd also like to honor the ancestors who are standing with me, who enliven me and uplift me. And again, deep bow to Tara, along with the late Sherry Maples, my beloved Ruth King, and so many teachers and mentors and Dharma friends who continue to be an invaluable support to my practice. I'm deeply grateful for their love and guidance on this path. So tonight I'm going to talk about the alchemy of suffering or the transformational power of the heart practices as the Buddha taught them. But first, I'd like to begin by offering an opportunity to pause, for us to gather ourselves here. So I invite you to sit comfortably in a way that balances effort and ease, alertness, yet relaxation. And simply allow your eyes to close softly, or simply lower your gaze if that's more comfortable. I invite you to take a few deep breaths, slowly filling your lungs. And then with each exhalation, releasing any tension in your body. Maybe just a few more deep breaths. And now just simply breathe naturally, however you're able to. Not trying to make any particular experience happen. Maybe dropping your shoulders. We often hold a lot of tension in our shoulders. Maybe relaxing the jaw, relaxing the forehead, and adjusting your posture in any way you need to for more comfort. Now become aware of the movement of the breath. And bring your attention to where the sensations of the breath are most distinct. It might be the cool air as it flows into your nose, or the warm air as it flows out. It might be the throat or the chest. Wherever you feel the breath most distinct, bring your attention there. And just breathe naturally. And just remain with the breath, sort of resting in this moment. Now I invite you to bring your attention to the area of the heart. Imagine your breath is coming in and out of this heart space. Maybe take a moment to check in. How does this heart feel? Is it open? Is it closed? Is it tender? Is it tentative? Curious? There's no right answer. All feelings are welcome. It's just a gentle noticing of what's present in the heart space. Now I invite you to bring to mind an image of yourself. You might imagine looking into a mirror as you continue to breathe naturally from this heart space. And while holding this image of yourself in the mind, I invite you to make these offerings to yourself with as much tenderness as possible in this moment. Maybe you can even rest your hand on your heart, if that's helpful. And say to yourself, May I be happy and peaceful, holding this image of yourself in the mind's eye. May I be safe and protected, breathing naturally without efforting. May I be healthy and strong. May I live with ease and well-being. Still holding the image of yourself in the mind's eye. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be safe and protected. May I be healthy and strong. May I live with ease and well-being. Let the phrases sink in. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be safe and protected. May I be healthy and strong. May I live with ease and well-being. And while abiding in this love and compassion, or just gentle tenderness toward yourself, bring to mind the image of someone you love, someone who's easy to love. Maybe your partner or your spouse, maybe your child, or even your pet. And holding this image in the mind's eye, extend this feeling of love and compassion to this person or pet. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and well-being. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and well-being. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and well-being. Now bring to mind the image of a neutral person, someone who you may casually know. It might be the barista at the cafe, or a neighbor you don't really know that well, or the grocery store worker who checks you out, or the person who delivers your mail, someone you casually know, and extend this feeling of love and compassion to this person. Again, breathing in and out from your heart space. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and well-being. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and well-being. Now bring to mind someone with whom you're having difficulty with. And not someone who causes you extreme distress, just someone who may trigger you a bit. And extend this feeling of love and compassion to this person when they come to mind. Again, breathing in and out from your heart space. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and well-being. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and well-being. May you be happy and peaceful. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and well-being. And if you're unable to offer love and compassion to this person, you can simply have the aspiration to, and then offer love and compassion to yourself for that aspiration. Now bring to mind the entire world, all living beings, all sentient beings, humans, plants, animals, insects, this beautiful interdependent ecosystem. and extend this feeling of love and compassion to all beings from the heart. May we all be happy and peaceful. May we all be safe and protected. May we all be healthy and strong. May we all live with ease and well-being. May we all be happy and peaceful. May we all be safe and protected. May we all be healthy and strong. May we all live with ease and well-being. May we all be happy and peaceful. May we all be safe and protected. May we all be healthy and strong. May we all live with ease and well-being. Now I invite you to return your awareness to the breath. And let's maybe sit together for a few minutes, just peacefully abiding in this awareness, this touching into love, to compassion, into connection. Maybe take a few deep breaths, filling your lungs. And then with each exhalation, relaxing, releasing any tension in your body if you need to. And so we'll just breathe naturally. See if you can continue to abide in that heart space as you breathe. When the mind wanders, as it will, simply return your attention to the breath, to the heart space, as many times as you need to. And slowly coming back into the room you're in. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And thank you for your practice. So as I mentioned, the title of my talk tonight is The Alchemy of Suffering. And so what does alchemy mean? So according to the interwebs, alchemy is a seemingly magical process of transformation, creation, or combination. Or it's the process of taking something ordinary and turning it into something extraordinary, sometimes in a way that cannot be explained. So I'd like to talk tonight about how our experiences of suffering, the first noble truth, how our experiences of suffering can be transformed into the liberation of our hearts and minds, into love. This alchemical process of transforming suffering happens when we cultivate an abiding awareness and experience of love in its truest forms, expressed by the Buddha as the Brahmaviharas, instead of clinging to deluded states of heart and mind. Not only can this awareness of the omnipresence of love transform a mind that is suffering, but the practice of loving, the act of loving, the doing of loving, can keep waking us up, helping us access, activate, reveal our true inherent nature when it is unclouded by all the clinging, the aversion, the hatred, and delusion. So what are the Brahmaviharas, these heart or love practices? So during the lifetime of the Buddha, those of the Brahmanic faith, prayed that after death they would go to heaven to forever be with Brahma, the universal God. And Brahmanism was an ancient Indian religious tradition, predated the Buddha. One day a Brahmin man asked the Buddha, "What can I do to be sure that I will be with Brahma after I die?" And the Buddha replied, "As Brahma is the source of love, to dwell with him you must practice the Brahmaviharas, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity." Loving kindness is metta in Pali. Pali was the language of the Buddha. Compassion is Karuna. Sympathetic joy is Mudita. And equanimity is Upekkha. According to Thai forest monk Thanissaro Bhikkhu, the Brahmaviharas, or they're also referred to as the sublime attitudes, are the Buddha's primary heart teachings. They are essentially 4 expressions of true love. They're also called immeasurable because if we practice them, if we cultivate them, they will grow and grow every day until they encompass the entire world. Cultivating the Brahmaviharas helps us manifest heart and mind qualities that are, again, innate in all of us as potential. Metta, or loving kindness, is our capacity for friendliness or goodwill. Karuna, or compassion, is our capacity to stay present when faced with pain and suffering. Mudita, or sympathetic joy, is our capacity for endless appreciative joy and gratitude. And Upekkha is our capacity to be with things just as they are, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Tapping into and practicing with these attitudes of love, compassion, sympathetic joy, or equanimity can transform suffering by helping us activate, experience, and act from our inherent nature, which is love. I've heard many times over the years that the Buddha said, "Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything simply because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe in anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the goodwill and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it." I love that so much. So I'd like to offer some context from my own life as an example of how transformative these heart practices can be. In other words, why I have accepted it as my truth and am practicing living up to it. So I grew up in Queens, New York in the late 60s, 70s, early 80s, the birth of hip hop, in a family of high achievers that emphasized education and performance and accomplishment and a lot of perception management. But all things emotional or touchy-feely or anything with a whiff of vulnerability were subtly or explicitly discouraged. My parents were preparing me in the best ways they knew how for a world they felt would likely be harsher for me as a Black woman. And I'm so grateful for their expression of unconditional love and an unwavering desire to protect me. But because of my naturally sensitive, emotional, touchy-feely disposition, I frequently felt anxious and sad, and frustrated, and tender, and heartachy. And I managed my naturally sensitive emotional disposition by suppressing it, by achieving and succeeding according to expectations, by people pleasing and overvigilance, reading the room, accommodating others for validation, all to feel okay in my own skin. And this constant shape-shifting, plus the messages I was receiving implicitly and explicitly from the world, strengthened an underlying narrative I accepted, that I was somehow inherently inadequate or insufficient, not enough of something, for which I had to constantly overcompensate. And over time, this efforting became so exhausting, and the inner dialogue became so loud, that I started using alcohol pretty young to maintain this mask I had developed in order to keep these big emotions under control. And eventually the alcohol stopped working, and the suffering became unbearable. So after years in and out of AA and detox and 2 inpatient treatment programs, I finally got sober in April of 1997, but I was still suffering, just not using alcohol as a refuge anymore. And then once in early recovery, I came across more and more Buddhist authors and teachings on the nature of suffering and how to get free. And the teachings resonated so deeply, like I was not learning something new, but instead being reminded of something I already knew. In addition to the Four Noble Truths and the foundations of mindfulness, I was drawn to the Buddhist teachings on these Brahmaviharas, these heart practices. So what are they? And so metta is the first of the 4 heart practices and probably the most familiar, right? It's the one we hear most about, and it's often considered the foundation of the Brahmaviharas. And so metta is the loving kindness quality of the heart that we cultivate toward all sentient beings, including ourselves, right? It's essentially the opening of our heart to ourselves and others. And one way we cultivate metta is through meditation, which is what we did at the beginning of this talk. So in metta meditation, we practice setting an intention to offer a friendliness, a care, a tenderness to ourselves and to others. We may reflect on our own deepest desire to be happy, to be safe and at ease, and then remember that all of us, all beings, share this same aspiration. But metta doesn't mean we, walk around skipping and happy and loving all day, right? Ignoring all the heartache and the difficulties and the dysfunction of the world. It's just a knowing that other beings just want to be happy, safe, and healthy too. And we can cultivate a heart that cares for that well-being. And in this way, metta practice can remind us of our interbeing and our interdependence, right? A reminder, for example, that my liberation is intrinsically linked to the liberation of others. Like Dr. King said, no one's free until we're all free. I love this quote from Lila Watson. She's an Indigenous Australian visual artist. She's an activist. She's an academic. And she said, if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, let us work together. See, we're all connected. A tremor in one part of the web affects the entire web. So the importance of cultivating metta for all, especially now, cannot be overstated. So the second Brahmavihara is Karuna, or compassion. So whether it's the suffering we experience ourselves or the suffering of another, Compassion is caring about and being present for the pain that we all experience. In the classical teachings of the Buddha, compassion is defined as the heart that trembles in the face of suffering. At times when we come into contact with pain or suffering, like racism or injustice or oppression, the reaction is often to turn away, to feel aversion, to hate it, to close it down, and maybe even become apathetic. So compassion can be seen as an antidote to this hatred or this aversion, right? We allow our hearts to open to the suffering we come into contact with. In compassion meditation, we practice activating and cultivating that compassionate heart. It's there. We practice activating it, cultivating an awareness of it. We set the intention to care for our own suffering and the suffering of others, rather than pushing it away or going to war with it. Now, compassion doesn't mean we invite suffering in or become martyrs, but we practice meeting it, even befriending it, when it does show up in our experience. The Buddha called suffering a holy truth, right? It's part of the deal for all of us. All of us suffer. So the strength of compassion arises out of this ability to be with what is, seeing the true nature of suffering in the world and wanting to alleviate it, to bear witness to it in ourselves and in others without turning away, to name and confront realities like injustice and racism, and to act vigorously with all the skills and resources at our disposal. Compassion is not a passive practice. It's actively meeting suffering and taking action to help. The third heart practice is mudita, or sympathetic joy. As I mentioned, mudita is the practice of appreciating the joy and happiness of others. It's the quality of sharing in the experience of joy. We can recognize the impermanence of joy and really rejoice in the experience while it is present. Sometimes when others experience some flavor of joy, jealousy or judgment might arise for us. So mudita can be an antidote to this jealousy and envy, allowing us to simply bear witness, to celebrate that this other person is experiencing happiness, that joy is here, that joy is present. Mudita practice helps us cultivate this quality by continuously setting the intention to be present for joy. And when practiced over time, mudita begins to open our heart to our own joy as well. We begin to recognize more joy. And in this way, mudita practice can sensitize us to joy, right? Because as they say, what we give our attention to grows in our awareness. So mudita can sensitize us to joy, recognize it more often. So in this way, we don't have to make joy happen. It's not an efforting. We simply open to it more and more and more. Mudita practices this gradual, continual process of opening the heart to more joy. And then the final of the 4 Brahmaviharas is upekkha, or equanimity. And equanimity, it may be seen as a balancing factor that keeps us grounded as we do this practice. As we open our hearts, equanimity can keep us grounded. So having a super sensitive disposition myself, where I go from despair to bliss in a matter of hours these days, these divine abodes, this particular divine abode, as they call them, is particularly helpful. Equanimity is this quality of remaining stable and steady in the midst of all experience. Equanimity can be seen as a container of composure that supports the practice of the other Brahmaviharas, right? Giving us greater capacity for love, for compassion, and for joy. These four immeasurables, as I mentioned, they're often called, are already facets of our hearts and minds. So again, the practice is actually a matter of increasingly revealing these facets, allowing them to arise and flow in any given moment. Love, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity are also known as the boundless states, because in their true nature, they don't exclude. They're unbiased. They're not bound up by our own preferences or our own prejudices. In other words, no one, nothing gets left out. As I mentioned, of these four heart and mind states, loving kindness or metta is often seen as the most fundamental. Right? It's said that loving kindness was the underlying motivation that led the Buddha to search for awakening to begin with, and to teach the path of awakening to others when he found it. So we can think of the next two virtues, Karuna or compassion, and Mudita or sympathetic joy. We can think of the next two virtues as essentially applications of loving kindness, right? Compassion is what loving kindness feels like when it meets suffering. It wants the suffering to stop out of a feeling of love. Sympathetic joy is what loving kindness feels like when it meets the joy of others, right? It wants the joy of the other is experiencing to continue out of a feeling of love. And then equanimity can be viewed as unifying and again balances these experiences. So, for example, when we meet suffering that we can't stop, no matter how hard we try, we need equanimity to avoid creating additional suffering so that we can channel our energies in ways that are useful and skillful. And equanimity also incorporates or is an expression of wisdom, right? Because it encompasses truths like impermanence and unsatisfactoriness or dukkha or suffering, and no self, that we're actually just a product of our imagination. And as I understand it, the Buddha said that anyone who is unable to join one's mind with these four causes or sources of human sanity will constantly be bound by the confusion of cyclical existence. Cyclic existence. Here I believe the Buddha is talking about cultivating loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity as the four causes or sources of human sanity. And that without these qualities, the human mind is constantly trapped in this cyclic existence called samsara, just this perpetual suffering. And Brahmavihara practice is an intentional practice. It's a deliberate practice, right? We practice with sincerity and with commitment as opposed to trying to get it perfect and then berating ourselves when we don't. It's a practice. If we want to be more patient people, we don't instantly become more patient. We get more opportunities to practice patience. And in that way, we strengthen the skill, the art of patience. And it's the same with the Brahmaviharas, these heart practices. And our suffering provides an opportunity to practice cultivating the skill, the art of loving, regardless of the conditions we find ourselves in. And it doesn't mean it's always easy, but it's possible. This practice of loving requires us to be with our pain and suffering, which is really kind of the part I was trying to skip over when I was trying to get sober over and over again. I was unwilling to look at it, be with it. So first we acknowledge our suffering. We tend to it. We ride the waves of discomfort and uncertainty without panicking. We open to it. We get to know its texture, its stories. We get to know the ways it triggers more suffering. We meet it with tenderness and compassion until space around it opens up. We can let the experience of suffering tenderize us, burn off attachment to ways of being in the world that are no longer useful, that no longer serve loving, and allow love and insight and wisdom to emerge. We can walk this path of love and liberation, not just for ourselves, but for our elders, our teachers, our ancestors, our friends and family and community, our world. And maybe in some way our commitment to love, to not be defined by or collapse around our own pain and fears or the fears of others. Even our celebration of joy, unapologetically, is a way we can honor the lives, the struggles, the impact, the sacrifices that were made on our behalf. And for me, especially the sacrifices made on my behalf by my Black and queer women elders and ancestors. Maybe our commitment to practicing these Brahmaviharas, this loving, no matter what, no matter who, and our leaning into joy wherever we encounter it, can be our deepest and most enduring expression of gratitude to them, gratitude for them, a celebration of their lives. The individual and collective suffering, exacerbated by the intensity of 2020, has created an opportunity to strengthen our practice so that we can be of benefit to others in ways that are sustainable. Because as we practice with these 4 divine abodes, these Brahmaviharas, our loving can be, actually is already, boundless. And our actions can come from that boundlessness. Practicing equanimity can provide lots of caring space for confusion and heartache and concern without spiritual bypassing or becoming lost in pain. Instead of pointing to a way out, true equanimity offers a way through. Practicing with loving kindness and equanimity can help us maintain safe, kind space for all the passing thoughts and feelings, all the clinging and aversion, with some stability, knowing that the nature of life is impermanent. So we practice in this way to settle the mind and body. We practice to reconnect with our true selves. We practice to connect with the wider web of suffering. We practice to activate compassion, love, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We can learn to recognize, awaken, and develop these heart and mind states in any circumstance or conditions so that it just eventually becomes how we move through the world more often than not. This practice weakens the structure of ego clinging so that our true nature can break through and we can share this open-hearted posture with the world. It's also important to understand, quote, the near enemies of each Brahmavihara, which can arise when we buy into this idea that we're separate from each other. So metta, or loving kindness, can turn into a kind of possessive love or attachment. Karuna, or compassion, can turn into grief or overwhelm or burnout. Mudita, or sympathetic joy, can turn into jealousy or envy, as I mentioned earlier. And upekkha, or equanimity, can turn into indifference or apathy. Again, when we buy into this idea that we're separate from each other. So I've talked a lot about these heart practices and how they transform suffering. But how do we practically cultivate these states? Right? So first, we can practice informally, right within our day-to-day life, our day-to-day actions, and with the skillful direction of thought. So just informally. And second, with formal meditation, as we did earlier. And each is helpful and supports the other. So formal meditative practice trains us, trains our minds. It helps love, compassion, joy, and equanimity to become spontaneous throughout the day when we're not on the cushion. It helps keep the mind steady and calm when we get sort of irritated, triggered in the course of our day. It helps us to reorient ourselves and activate our intention to love, even if it's only toward our puppy in the moment, right? Practice helps us reorient ourselves and then activate that intention to love. And then once we become aware of any of these 4 qualities of love within ourselves, the practice is then to focus on staying present with this experience, stay present with this attitude, so we can get more familiar with it, see what it feels like in the body and in the mind, and then allow it to grow. Meditating on one of the Brahmaviharas is essentially developing the ability to stay concentrated on the practice without being distracted. It's a learning to dwell in love. Of learning to dwell in love. So outside of formal meditation, we can cultivate the Brahmaviharas right in our ordinary day-to-day lives. When we notice an experience of love, compassion, joy, or equanimity, maybe it's possible to savor it, to stay with it, rather than pivoting our focus. So if we become really familiar with what it's like to love, right, the felt experience of loving, we may be able to arouse any of the Brahmaviharas at any time, whether it's washing dishes, or folding clothes, or watching the leaves blow, or in conversation, or making love. So the alchemy of suffering. So love transformed my suffering into an awareness of the truth of who I truly am, into love. And the practice of loving, the art of loving, keeps me connected to that truth. It wakes me up when I forget, so I can choose to release attachments to what was never true in the first place. So again, the practice of loving, the doing of loving, keeps me connected to the truth, the awareness of the omnipresence of love. It wakes me up when I forget, so I can release attachments to what was never true in the first place. So my invitation to those listening is this: how can these heart practices support the transformation of your suffering? How can the practice of loving set you free? And everyone can experience this love and loving to some degree, even if it's just an aspiration to. We can all wake up to this truest expression of who we all inherently are and offer that to the world in our own unique way, one mindful moment at a time. And practice in whatever way suits you. suits your personality. I personally like stealth metta, for example. I do lots of stealth metta at airports, or in my car. I'll silently send wishes of well-being, or wishes of ease, or wishes of safety, or wishes of wellness to folks that I'm passing by in the airports, or folks in the cars as they pass by, right? We simply arouse the feeling of loving kindness, or any of the Brahmaviharas. We arouse the feeling, and then we move from doing metta, for example, to being metta by just simply resting in that experience. And then we just allow it to radiate out in all directions as best we can. So this journey with the Dharma, for me, has been the greatest love story ever. Not so unlike the love story I'm living with my wife, Michelle, right? With all the bliss and all the heartbreak, all the surrender, all the humbling, all the dissolving of ego, and with all the power to transform life's ordinary and extraordinary moments by opening the heart to all the magic, the magnificence, the fierceness, and the boundlessness of love, by committing to a deepening awareness and practice of love, one day at a time. May you discover this love story for yourself. May all beings be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May all beings be safe and live with ease. May all beings be happy and peaceful. May we all be free. Namaste. Be well, everyone.